think we are here, settled down now. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, please allow to introduce myself. My name is Kostas Dafos, Commercial Attaché at the Cyprus High Commission in London, and I wish to warmly welcome all of you to this exclusive gathering about something so exciting as the development of the first science technology park in Cyprus. We're all aware of your busy schedules, and your attendance today proves your genuine interest in finding out more about Cyprus' efforts to become a regional applied knowledge-based knowledge-based hub, and what this means to potential investors and other stakeholders. So again, we wish to thank you for your effort to be here with us. Dear friends, in March 2013, we witnessed Cyprus facing an unparalleled event, a financial crisis which interrupted one of the fastest growing economies in Europe. But since then, the Republic of Cyprus managed to prove beyond any doubt readiness to stand out on its own feet, and with the sacrifice tremendous efforts of its people to exceed even the most optimistic predictions. Following the reforms which were applied by the government, Cyprus has been able to re-enter the international capital markets quicker than expected, be upgraded by the rating agencies, and receive the support of their European counterparts. Cyprus has managed once again to show the great investment opportunities it offers as an international business center, and now the Cyprus government had decided to move one step further. And this is to develop an important infrastructure for the promotion of research, innovation, and high technology as a tool for enhancing entrepreneurship and smart specialization. Thus, we're very pleased and honored to have with us today Dr. Stelios Simonas, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism, and Mr. Angelos Grigoriadis, Member of the Board of Cyprus Investment Promotion Agency and President of the Cyprus Investment Funds Association, to tell us more about this fascinating new initiative. I wish to thank both for coming all the way from Cyprus for this presentation, and of course I should not forget to sincerely thank Mr. George Hadzipapas, Senior Industrial Extension Officer at the Ministry in Nicosia, who is also with us today, for his support and guidance to put together this event. Before we move on to the presentations, I also need to convey the regret of His Excellency the High Commissioner, Mr. Euripides Vriviadis, for not being able to be with us this time, as much as he wanted to, due to prior engagement at the House of Lords, but he did promise to do his best to join us by the end of this evening. This is all from me for now. I will hand you over to our guest speakers, and I'm sure that after the presentations, we'll have plenty of time to open the floor to any questions you may have. At the end of this evening, a network reception will follow, so I urge you to stay with us and have a glass of Cyprus wine, or perhaps two or three. I mean, Cyprus wine is pretty good, so sometimes we get carried away. So now I would like to invite Dr. Simonas to start us off with an outline of the first science technology park in Cyprus. Dr. Simonas, please.
Thank you, Kostas. Let me also welcome all of you, and at the same time, thank you for being here. Actually, Kostas said a little bit of my introduction. As you know, in March of 2013, we suffered the worst economic crisis in our history. The country almost went bankruptcy. Since then, we implemented tough austerity measures, and now, 2.5 years later, our banks have been recapitalized, fully recapitalized. We reduced the size of the banking sector in that regard. Also, public finances have become healthier, and we did implement a number of reforms within government for that. And now, as we are exiting, so to speak, the MOU with Troika, hopefully by March 2016, we are moving ahead with plans for sustainable growth and job creation. Now, Cyprus has very limited natural resources, except of course for hydrocarbons, raw materials, and our heavy industry potential is quite low. However, we are located at the crossroads of the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, of course. We are the only EU member state and also a member of the Eurozone in the area. And the environment is stable and predictable. And we also have very, very friendly relations with all the countries in the region, except from one, of course, and you know which one that is. So if one establishes himself in Cyprus, he will be, we think, in a very, very good environment, and he can reach out in a vast market in the area. In addition, the standard of living in Cyprus is pretty high. The weather is excellent, food is excellent, living conditions are excellent. Also, all kinds of services are there. The tax system is quite attractive. Corporate tax is only 12.5%. I think the lowest in Europe, or one of the lowest in Europe. And also, last but not least, probably our biggest asset, our human capital. Most of our graduates, our high school graduates, go to college, and about 25% major in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, or math. So we see that there is great innovation and entrepreneurial potential in Cyprus. So our vision is to transform Cyprus into a regional center for applied research, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. And it's not a surprise that in the newly developed growth strategy, entrepreneurship and innovation are at the center of this strategy. We did develop a national policy statement for the improvement of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Cyprus. It is short, it's not too much blah blah, targeted. It includes some concrete actions and also very well-defined KPIs. The objective of this policy statement is to improve the entrepreneurial culture and skills, increase the number of new, innovative, high-value added enterprises in Cyprus, improve competitiveness and sustainability of businesses, and promote the internationalization of Cypriot enterprises. How are we going to achieve all of this? By introducing entrepreneurial courses in our educational system. We also built what we called, following the EU example, a national coalition for digital jobs to make our society and our companies digital. Along with that, we are promoting e-government. We are planning for a technology transfer center. We are devising incentives to invest in research and innovation. We are making plans to facilitate access to financing. And last but not least, what we are here for today is to bring together researchers, entrepreneurs from abroad as well, to mingle with our own organizations so that we can create this innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem that we envisage. We are also establishing an entrepreneurial center which will provide information on all available funding resources, including access to EU funds. It will facilitate business activity through the operation of a one-stop shop where somebody can come in and open up his business without running around to to different government departments to get permits and other licenses that are needed. And it will also provide mentoring services to businesses through a network of mentors that we are trying to build. Okay, now let's turn to the main topic of today's event, the Science and Technology Park. As I said, we endeavor that this will host research centers, high-tech companies, startups, and in general, any kind of knowledge-based organization. The park will be built in state-owned land, and the land will be made available through a 50-year land lease agreement, which will be renewable. And we will select a strategic investor through a tender procedure. And of course, the investor must be experienced, he must know how to do the job, and he must also have the financial capability to implement the project. And for that, to pick the right guy, we offer a nice, we think, incentive package. And this incentive package consists of financial, tax, and town planning incentives. Mr. Grigoriadis will elaborate more in the next presentation, so I won't spend too much time on this. I just want to mention two of those incentives. He can start paying the rent after 5 years from the date of signing the land lease agreement. And we will also offer a reduction in the rent of 10% of the investment up to a maximum of 3 million. We are also facilitating work permits of third country nationals, and we know that electricity is a big cost in running these kinds of businesses, so we are allowing the strategic investor to build his own renewable energy plant to generate his own electricity for the needs of the park. The park is located at the Pentakomo area. It's 16 kilometers from Limassol. That's the second largest city in Cyprus. 50 kilometers from Larnaca, where the airport is, and 65 kilometers from the capital, Nicosia. It is in this area here, it is very close to the coast, and the total area that will be made available is what is highlighted here. It's about 340,000 square meters, and whatever land did not belong to the government has already been expropriated. So the land is available, okay? And it is close, that little rectangle adjacent to the park. This belongs to the Cyprus Institute. The Cyprus Institute is a research organization in Cyprus that is funded mainly by the government, and they operate there a renewables power plant, and they also have energy storage facilities. So the supply of energy could be arranged in cooperation with the Cyprus Institute. How about the planning?
Sorry, could I see that again, please? Is it close to Limassol area or?
Yes.
I missed that. Yes.
It's 16 kilometers
Yes,
from Limassol.
Sure, thank you. Sorry for interruption.
No problem. The building ratio is 45%. We think that if someone, it doesn't have to be to build two high buildings. 2 to 3 floors could be enough. However, more is possible if there is a need. The strategic investor will be allowed to build a small hotel up to 100 rooms, we say. He has to make provisions for green areas, up to 15% of the total area. He will have the right to build conference and exhibition facilities, as well as other support facilities such as housing, small apartments, recreational facilities, cafeteria, small restaurant, and so forth. Now, through the land lease agreement, we will give the right to the strategic investor to possess, use, administer, manage, and operate the park, and he'll also have the right to mortgage it to raise capital and finance the project. And through this land lease agreement, he will be entitled to rent or lease building space to tenants, or he can lease or rent land to tenants to build their own facilities. There will be a requirement that the park operates within 5 years from the date of signing the land lease agreement. However, not all installations and infrastructure have to be built at once. There will be phase development will be allowed. Okay. So he can go beyond the 5 years developing the park. However, he has to operate within 5 years. At the same time, the government will support the project by building all supporting infrastructure, be it public road, sidewalks, lighting, telecommunications infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, water supply, and whatever else is needed. And that obligation on the government side will have to be fulfilled within 18 months from the date of signing the contract. Now, let's say a few words about the tender procedure itself. The RFP documents have been drafted. They are at the final stages of legal vetting at the Law Office of the Republic. We hope to be able to issue the RFP by the end of this month, and interested parties will have 4 months to submit proposals. There will be some eligibility criteria. These are very light. An applicant has to be a legal entity or a consortium. However, double participation is not allowed. In other words, an entity cannot participate in 2 proposals. And also, the applicant must have substantial, and we define substantial by more than 30% participation in at least one such project, or alternatively, if it's a consortium, a member of the consortium should have participated in at least 2 large construction projects of any kind, and also include in the team somebody with at least 10 years of experience in operating such parks. You'll also have to submit a business plan to demonstrate that he meets some technical requirements, and that will include a master plan for the project, a development time schedule. He must also demonstrate that he understands what he needs to do to construct the park by describing the necessary permits and licenses that he has to get. He must also provide a risk assessment of factors which may affect the smooth implementation of the project. And of course, he must demonstrate that he has the money to carry out the project, to execute the project. With his proposal, he must also include a financial offer, which could either be in lump sum form and or in annual installments. Okay. Now, how are we going to do the evaluation? First, we'll apply the qualification adequacy test. That's a pass or fail test. And applicants that pass are those who meet the eligibility criteria and also the technical requirements. And those who pass the qualification adequacy test will be considered for the second stage, where we'll open their financial offers, and the successful guy will be the one with the highest financial offer. And of course here, because it could be in terms of installments, we'll consider the NPV at a specified discount rate. And we'll allow for negotiations on some non-critical aspects, for example, height of the buildings and things of this sort. Okay? So that is pretty much the framework for the science and technology park that we endeavor to build in Cyprus. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. In producing these incentives, we have looked at different countries where technological parks are operating in an attempt to find as many as possible incentives that we can provide. But we also have taken into consideration that Cyprus, being an EU country, has to go along with the guidelines as to what it could be provided. And but I would like to outline the incentives. Apart from those that are available for the strategic investor, there are incentives for high-paid employees and low-paid employees who come and work in the technological park, and there are also incentives for the companies who will be operating there. So I will start with the incentives that we have for high-paid employees who take up residency in Cyprus for the first time and are employed by a Cypriot entity. The first incentive, it relates to if they earn more than 100,000 euros per year, there is an exception of 50% of that income from the income tax provisions, of the personal income tax provisions. The maximum rate that we have for taxing individuals after the non-taxable amount, which is 20,000 euros, it climbs up to 35%. Therefore, if 50% is exempt of your income, then the effective tax maximum climbs up to 17.5%. So you would appreciate this a very good incentive for high-paid employees, maximum tax rate of 17.5%. And this exemption is now under review in the House of Representatives, and there will be an extension to that to from 5 years to 10-year period. So anybody who comes and works from now has a 10-year period with the maximum tax rate of 17.5%. We also have an incentive for low-paid employees who take up residency again for the first time. This incentive is running for 3 years and is to be extended up to 2020. And the maximum exemption is 20% of the remuneration, or 8,550 tax credit, whichever is the maximum. So again, for lower and high-paid employees, there is a very good incentive in taking up residency in Cyprus. We have also in Cyprus introduced the so-called domicile status, which you are very well aware in the UK. Non-domicile Cypriot tax residents are exempt from the special contribution that we have on dividends, interest, and rents. Locals, like myself, we pay 17% on dividends that we receive, 30% on interest that we earn, and 3% on rents. Such tax is exempt for non-domicile, and the non-domicile remains non-domicile for the first 17 years that they take up employment in Cyprus. A very attractive provision. Even if they become, if they take up the passport, the Cypriot passport, which is another incentive that you will see later on, they are still will be entitled to this exemption from the special contribution. Another important incentive is that we have, if one looks on the payroll contributions for employee and employer and compares country by country, You will see in Cyprus we have one of the lowest, 19.30%, a combined payroll contribution. In the UK, you will see it climbs up to 27%, whereas in other countries like Germany, we are talking about 38%, and Slovakia, 49%, Italy, 40 to 45%, and we see in Cyprus that we are below 20%, which is another important something that needs to be taken into consideration by a company setting up in Cyprus. As regards companies, it has been mentioned we have one of the lowest tax rates, 12.5% corporate tax, and of course all expenditure incurred wholly and exclusively for acquisition of income is tax deductible, same as in the UK, no difference to that. And the Cypriot income tax law stipulates that tax losses that are generated are allowed to be carried forward for the next 5 years. So that's another provision in the income tax law. Also, all expenses incurred for the acquisition or development of intangible assets, as these are defined in the patents, copyright, and trademark laws, are tax deductible. But such expenditure of capital nature is deducted from taxable income after it has been equally apportioned between the fiscal year in which it took place and the immediate next 4 years. Further, a deduction of 80% is provided as an expense from profits generated by intellectual property, and this applies for income from intellectual property and as well as capital gains that one realizes from the sale of intellectual property. This incentive you will find in other countries within Europe and is under consideration by the EU. Currently, it's applicable until 2016, and there will be new provisions that will apply until 2021. But again, 80% of your royalty income is tax exempt in Cyprus. Another incentive is the acquisition cost for the purchase of shares of an innovative enterprise are wholly deductible from taxable income. This is to encourage new startups and to be able to get financing from individuals, and this provision will be also expanded to give more defined definitions of what is innovative business and startups and so forth. But it's an incentive that will help the startups work their way up and use also, of course, the technological park, and this will be another incentive that is currently on offer. Now, companies also are able to deduct this expense in the form of interest, which will be calculated based on a percentage of the new share capital of the company. So a Cypriot entity that is set up in Cyprus is not only allowed to deduct interest on loans that they have obtained, but also they are entitled to deduct a deemed interest deduction on the share capital they have contributed to the company. So again, it's a new tax incentive that was introduced in order to encourage new businesses to set up in Cyprus. Incentives which are under consideration for approval of the House of Representatives include, there is a draft legislation providing for the deduction of the total expenditure incurred for the acquisition of fixed assets used for business purposes, falling within the fields of research, innovation, information technology, communications, renewable energy, and green growth from the taxable income. So these are capital expenditures that will be allowed to be deducted from the taxable income from year one. This incentive is under consideration currently by the Parliament. Other incentives that are under consideration include the provision of tax incentives for each new job position created. This is again will allow a deemed deduction of an additional 25% of the payroll cost of a new company that sets up in Cyprus. They will be allowed to deduct another 25% based on the payroll cost. as an incentive to employ more employees in their operations. There is also under consideration, because we have a 5-year carry forward losses, that the new expenses, the first 5-year expenses that are set up for a new setup company will be allowed to be written off within a 5-year period rather than write them off from the first year of operation. This will allow the expansion of the period where tax losses may be carried forward. On the residence permits, here as from 25th of August 2014, work and residence permits are granted to third country nationals. This is opposed, of course, EU countries, we have no problem, but for third country nationals, as regards international business companies, they are allowed to bring in such people, and the technological park companies that will set up there will be allowed to bring their own people along. In the case that the participation of a third country national is less or equal to 50% of the share capital, for the company to be considered potential beneficiary and be allowed to bring these third country nationals, it should hold a percentage representing an amount equal to greater than 171,000 euro. So such companies that are more than 50% owned by non-EU residents are allowed to employ third country nationals in their payroll. Also, possible for the company to employ 5 senior managers of third country nationality at a lower wage of 41,000, as well as 10 middle management officers of third country nationality with a salary in the range from 21,000 to 41,000 euros. Again, these conditions are continuously being renewed in order to bring the expertise required into Cyprus from third country nationals to be employed in the technological park. And I hope that the best practice that is usually followed by the government is that for strategic investments there is always a new consideration to make the investor welcoming into Cyprus. Granting of the Cypriot citizenship is a program that runs for quite some time now, and if somebody invests 5 million in Cyprus, then he's entitled to a Cypriot passport. If he and other 4 people get together and invest 2.5 million euros, then they consider to be a collective investment scheme, and they are entitled with 2.5 million investment to get a Cypriot passport. Of course, they have to buy a house in Cyprus, and that is for the passport holders would be 500,000 euros. For work permits, if you buy a house worth of at least 300,000, you will be entitled to a residence permit. There is a consideration for setting up a researcher's card. This is a card that will allow somebody who works in the technological park to enter and leave Cyprus in an easier way through the airports, as well as to be allowed to visit universities in Cyprus for their research. Additional incentives, it relates to the strategic investor. This it has already been mentioned that for the first 5 years there will be no rental to be paid, whereas also there will be an allowance, a state aid of 10% of the eligible cost with a maximum of 3 million will be given to the strategic investor in the form of no rental payments after the 5-year free period. And the eligible cost you will find in the handouts we gave you. What does it mean, new machinery? What does it mean, the new buildings? They are defined all there, so I don't need to go through these provisions. What is a new machinery? And lastly is the renewable energy resources. The strategic investor can install a renewable energy power system of a capacity of up to 5 megawatts, which will work with the auto production method using the electricity generated by the system exclusively for the purpose of own consumption. In conclusion, the government, through the ministry, is committed to provide all necessary facilities to the strategic investor regarding the authorization procedures, as well as any other issues in which the government departments, agencies may be involved. Thank you very much.